Nitro with the nice flow. Y'all acting like y'all don't know. Stop acting like y'all don't know.
Joe Campbell.
Who the future? We the future. Who the future? Us. Who the future? We the future. Who the future? Us. Causing chaos in the back of the bus. Get your hands up. We gon' show you how we buzz. Yeah. The future.
On a suddenly not so casual Wedding Wednesday, it is December 14, 2022. It is CFB Knowledge for College, the Shark and the Gun Bowl Season Pre-Show Round 1. We're talking this weekend. We're talking Friday and Saturday, December 16th and 17th. Guns Picks. A late evening it is. I'm taking a sip of beer. Let's talk some football. What's going on?
Yeah, we had to do this a little bit earlier this week because we have obligations. I got too many damn Christmas parties to go to before I hit the vacation mode. But we're going to be doing a few more shows just to get the bowls as we get closer to the actual college football playoff at the end of the year. So just stay with us on this stuff. And also rest in peace. I'm going to wear the Mississippi State hat. Mike Leach, the beauty, the best. Loved him as a dog. Loved taking his overs. He is going to be missed for sure. And I'm ready for the slate to get started. 41 games, 82 teams, only one champion. Let's do it.
Is that really what it is? 41 games, 82 teams?
41 games, 82 teams. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry, not 82 teams because it's 41 games and minus 2. So it's actually 80 teams because the champions meet each other in the after the college football playoff semis. So after 4. So yeah, 41 games.
Right.
Yep.
And first game, let's talk some business here. 11:30 a.m. International game here, Nassau, Bahamas. Talk about a location to play a bowl game, particularly for the University of Alabama, Birmingham, and Ben Roethlisberger, Wally Zerbiak, Miami of Ohio. Guns Picks, a lot going on in this game. UAB has been a comedic disaster on the road this year. 0-6 ATS. But you're looking at that side of the game. Open it up. Let's talk about it.
I'm looking at just the dynamics of the two teams. So is this a vacation for these this one team or both teams, or is it a business trip for one? I think it's more of a business trip for UAB. Let me tell you why. Listen, I know where Miami of Ohio is at right now. They finished the season winning 3 out of the last 4 games, getting bowl eligible in that regard. Minus 3 point differential for the season, minus 63 net yard average for the season. Now you got to look at UAB. Disappointing year for them overall. They lose their coach, Bill Clark. He decides to retire in the mid-season. They get their interim coach that stepped in. He did a good enough job to actually get them to the bowl games. But they only had 6 wins this season, which is kind of a down year for UAB overall in the Blazers. They did win their last game to get in that bowl, which should kind of strike a note there. It's like, well, why would you want to go to the bowl? They go and beat La Tech by 10. But they finished the year plus 8 point differential, plus 74 net yard average in that regard. UAB's strength for the season, running the football. They averaged 6 yards per carry on the ground, 244 yards per game. Dwayne McBride, this guy you're going to see on NFL Sundays soon enough. He had 1,710 yards this season, 7.3 yards per carry. The dude is a dog. Now you got to look at Miami, Ohio. You actually look at their last 3 games of the season. They couldn't stop the run at all. They gave up 5.3 yards per carry, over 200 yards on the ground in the last 3 games. But now we look at the non-conference. This is where you got to look at these teams in the non-conference situations. So Miami, Ohio, non-conference, minus 6 point differential, minus 64 net yard average. UAB, on the other hand, plus 9 point differential, minus 27 net yard average. So they are able to get the wins. They're able to get the W's. The net yard average is pretty much even. But here's the key point here. UAB has Trent Dilfer as their coach next year, right? The players are a little bit pissed off about that one because they wanted their interim coach to be the guy. But they didn't just opt out on him. They didn't just let him go and let him finish the season. They decided to stay with him and actually go get him that W, the last W as the head coach. There is a huge motivational factor for the UAB team. Whereas with Miami, Ohio, we don't even know who the quarterback is. They lost their top lineman. He decides to go to the transfer portal. They lost some key guys on the defensive side. Miami, Ohio does not want to be in this game. Miami, Ohio wanted to win the MAC, and they didn't get there this year because they had to deal with injuries on Gabbert's side. Now, this tells me everything about the line because the line's sitting at -10.5, -11. You can still find some -10s out there. I think this is going to be an absolute UAB blowout. Dwayne McBride is probably going to be the MVP of the game. He's going to have 300 yards rushing, in my opinion. I think that dude is going to absolutely step out, and the NFL guys are going to be scouts taking notes of this guy. But I like UAB. I'm taking him as a favorite. May sound a little bit public, but I think the motivational factor is there for these guys. Give me UAB. I got him at -10.5, and it's only a 1.5 unit play for me.
Yeah, no, and I think that's interesting because obviously, as I introed the game, I mentioned this team is 0-6 on the road ATS this year. And, you mentioned Dwayne McBride. I mean, as you mentioned, this kid is an absolute stud. I mean, we're probably looking at, a third or fourth round pick or something like that. And,
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I've watched him all year. I mean, he's just chunk yardage. He's an absolute beast through the middle and on the edge. It's fantastic stuff to watch. But, what has really held them back.
No, all I was going to say is I think the most quality running backs that have actually come out of the league, like under the radar, are those guys that are coming out of the G5s in that third or fourth round. You're getting a lot of value. The 49ers have took advantage of the guy from ULL. It seems like these guys, especially when you have injuries on key guys and you have these guys just stepping up into the moment, G5 running backs are guys that you want to take a look at in the third or fourth round. Let me tell you.
Yeah. No, without question. And, UAB did burn me on the road numerous times this year. And the real standout point was the fact that they could not hold onto the ball. A lot of turnovers on the road, particularly fumbling the football, because this is a very run-heavy team. And, I mean, really almost incomprehensible stuff where a team that was 8-4 last year did actually win a bowl game against BYU. Highly impressive. Brought back at least most of their premier players. And again, if you really go through this, and I know a lot of guys might not be following UAB football as closely as myself and the Gun have this year, but when this team is costing you money, and they're costing you money because of outlierish stuff, which would be games with 4 turnovers, 2 in the red zone in the first half, going back to the Liberty game Saturday, September 10th, which really set the tone for their inability to cover and win ball games on the road. Of course, only one outright win all year coming in the season finale at Louisiana Tech, who was down all year. Yet another non-cover, -18, somehow did not cover that and won by 10 after scoring 20 points in the second quarter alone. Just an absolute catastrophe for this team this year. But as you mentioned, if you look at Miami of Ohio here, go back to their out-of-conference schedule. 2 games stand out to me. At Kentucky, in the opener, a 24-point loss, and home against Cincinnati. Actually, I'm looking at this now. It was a neutral location. I'm not sure where that was played. It looks like week 3, Saturday, September 17th. But key point, nonetheless, versus margin. If we're looking at a 10.5 line here, 11 line, when you lose to Kentucky, who was down at least to start the year and obviously inconsistent throughout the campaign, by 24, you lose to Cincinnati by 21. UAB, and I'll finalize this conversation on this game, Gun making a great point, just hired Trent Dilfer, obviously ex-NFL quarterback, Tampa Bay Bucks, and other teams. Great motivator, I do believe, obviously listening to him on ESPN for years. But this team loved their coach. They loved the interim coach. They wanted him to get promoted. This is what Gunn said. It's going to be their last hurrah to really show out for this coach. Obviously, the game being played at a really early start time in the Bahamas adds a layer of intrigue to the game. I wouldn't disagree. I think you made a lot of great angles here and great points. And I'm not throwing an official on this, but I'm deferring to the Gun, who's having a very successful college football campaign. I might tail this one. And if you guys in the chat, let's ride the wave, baby. And next game, same day, Friday, 3 o'clock. We're looking at a totally different style of matchup here. We have 2 ranked teams playing on the domestic U.S. soil here in in Orlando, Florida, the Duluth Trading Cure Bowl. UTSA at Troy, if you want to call it that. 24 versus 25. Both teams 11-2 on the campaign. Troy laying 1.5 points. Guns picks unofficial.
If you're going to be betting this Duluth trading game, just know you're going to see a lot of husky cartoon guys doing dances in their underwear because that's what Duluth trading does. But let me get into Troy here. Troy coming off a win, actually 10 straight wins. Both these teams are really come from the same spot, really. It's kind of an intriguing this one. 10 straight wins, including the Sun Belt Championship over Coastal Carolina, 45-26. Chadwell's last hurrah before he goes into be the head coach of Liberty. And it was plus 21 net yard average for the game. Now look at UTSA. They're coming off of 10 straight wins themselves. Conference USA champs. Beat North Texas 48-27 plus 205 net yards for that game. So we're going to have a matchup between the Sun Belt champ and the Conference USA champ. A great offense in UTSA versus a great defense in Troy. I like to take the teams that have the better defenses in bowls. That's where Troy's strength lies, is in their defense. They hold their opponents to 3.3 yards per carry on the rush, 208 yards per game passing. Troy is ranked 17th in the country in total defense. UTSA, while having a good offense by the numbers, 486 yards per game, 308 yards passing per game. The best defense they faced all year was UTEP, and UTEP is ranked 42nd overall. Take that with a grain of salt there, folks, because UTSA's stats don't tell the full story. And they go and if you actually these two, so when they played each other, UTEP lost by only 3 points in that game. So take that, consider that when you're going against a Troy team that has got a better defense, handled better competition, and also you got to look at UTS's defense too. I mean, UTSA can't stop anybody. They're ranked 90th in the country in total defense with 405 yards per game to their opponents. And they're also ranked 70th against the rush. They have given up 200 plus yards to good rush offenses in UAB, Texas, and UTEP. That's where Troy's strength lies. They're going to have to run the ball and they're going to have to pound it here. And that's what they're going to want to do. They're going to want to make those stops on the defensive side and then just run it down your throat. They have this great running back in Kiami Vital. He has 5.1 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns this season. So I think the dynamic of what's going to happen in this game, UTSA is going to try to utilize their high-powered offense, and they're going to face the best defense, the most athletic defense they have faced all year. Troy's going to be making the stops, and then Troy is just going to basically control the clock, run the ball, and get the scores as they may, whether it be field goals, whether it be touchdowns. I think Troy will control this game completely. Give me the Trojans, -1.5, and that's a 2-unit special.
I almost jumped halfway across the room with that little energy burst here, and as we get riding in here. But no, I mean, I'm looking at this game, and I mean, this game I had mentioned to you off the air. I think this game is going to be tight, and what I was really looking at was the early season schedule, as you mentioned, and this is a standout point for people watching the broadcast. Of course, we will reshare this. We know it's 10 o'clock at night. A lot of people are in bed right now. They're not firing off beers with the shark and the gun on a Sunday not so casual winning Wednesday evening talking some college football. But if you go back to early season, Troy was right on the number outside of conference on the road. At Ole Miss, 28-10. Of course, that seems like a blowout. It was not. The line was 16.5. It was right on the number. Actually, it might have been a little bit higher. I believe they covered that. I think it was 18.5, 20, 20.5, something like that. And then, of course, the conference opener at App State. I'm sure you guys remember that game. We had Troy correctly on that particular day. They got walked off by a Hail Mary out in Appalachian State, that beautiful campus and stadium in Western North Carolina. They should have won that game. But key point, that really jump-started their season. They haven't lost a game since, and they went on to win the Sun Belt title with a very impressive blowout win against Coastal Carolina, who we had been talking about all year as being a bit of a fool's gold team. I think people fell in love with them the previous year as a ranked team, a little bit of a darling, covering a lot of spreads, and even this year backdooring a few spreads in egregious fashion within conference and out of conference. But, I mean, Troy has really shown a lot of wind and prowess in this season. And as you mentioned, UTSA playing a far, far inferior schedule within Conference USA. I mean, when you look at these teams that they've been cleaning up, Middle Tennessee State, Florida International, North Texas twice, including the conference championship game. I mean, just take that as a snapshot to the quality of this conference. When you're playing North Texas in the conference title game, this is not a top level of conference quality when you cross with the rest of the country in FBS football. I wouldn't disagree with you. I don't love this game. The only counterpoint I do have is not necessarily a counterpoint to take UTSA. It's more so to the sharpness of this game. I did go back to a game on Saturday, September 10th, UTSA on the road at Army, out of conference game. They did win the game 41-38 in overtime. And even before that, their first non-conference game of the year went to triple overtime. I think, if you guys want a prop here, this is just coming to me as I speak on this game, maybe sprinkle this game to go to overtime. I think this could be an overtime game. And I think that could be a fun little prop because obviously, college football in the bowl games, particularly these non-conference ones that don't matter deeply, a lot of showcase type of games, prop bets are fun. I think maybe sprinkle a little bit to go to overtime. Of course, I wouldn't talk you off the guns. Look, I think Troy might win this game by 3 or 6 in overtime. So a lot going on there, and I think you have the sharp look, and we love to discuss it. Next one, Saturday, September, it will be. I can't wait till 2023. We'll get back in there after a long summer, fire it the hell off. But Saturday, December 17th, Fenway Park. Who knew? Football in the baseball stadium. Cincinnati at Louisville. Wasabi Fenway Bowl. Louisville getting steamed here as we have talked over the last 45 minutes. They were 1, now they're 1.5, now they're 2. They must have known we were about to drop an official play here. Guns picks. Louisville 7-5, laying points in Fenway, an official.
Mosey on down to the red line, to the green line, onto the tee, into Lansdowne Street to Fenway Park, cuz we're going to be not looking at baseball here. We're going to be looking at an actual bowl game. And I just saw on TV that the Winter Classic is going to be at Fenway Park as well. It's going to be a busy time there in Boston, cuz. All right, looking at this game, Louisville and Cincinnati, basically I call it the Satterfield Bowl. So, Scott Satterfield, the head coach for Louisville, decides to jump ship after Luke Fickell left Cincinnati. He's going to go take the Cincinnati job. Malik Cunningham's not going to be playing this game, the quarterback for Louisville. But they have Cincinnati's got their own list of huge problems as in the personnel as regarding the quarterback situation. I'll get to that in a second. Cincinnati coming off a loss to Tulane that could have got them into the AAC championship, 27-24, minus 46 net yard average. Louisville is also coming off a loss themselves, losing to Kentucky 26-13, minus 37 net yards for the game. Louisville has done well versus non-conference opponents this season, plus 14 point differential, plus 177 net yard average, including wins over JMU, UCF, and USF. So they are used to playing some AAC teams and a little bit of the Fun Belt. Now you got to look at Cincinnati. They've done well versus non-conference opponents as well, plus 22 point differential, plus 151 net yard average, but they've played weaker non-conference opponents. We're talking about Kennesaw State. I thought they only had a basketball program. Arkansas, Miami, Ohio, and Indiana. Those are their non-conference opponents. Louisville's a run-first offense. They average 4.9 yards per carry on the ground and 6.3 yards per carry versus non-conference opponents. Cincinnati has shown some weaknesses versus good run teams this season. They give up 5 yards per carry to Arkansas, 5.2 yards per carry to USF, 5 yards per carry to UCF, 5.3 yards per carry to ECU, and 4.6 yards per carry to Tulane. So you're seeing a pattern here of a team that is just poor against the rush, especially teams that can beat them with dual threat quarterbacks. Now, Louisville is highly motivated here. They want to beat the crap out of this Cincinnati team after their coach decides to leave to go to them as they're the better program and not Louisville. So there's a little bit of a motivation there. I know Malik Cunningham's not playing this game, but they have a quarterback that at least has taken snaps and actually played 2 or 3 games down the road here. I think he played the back half of the season against Clemson and other teams as well. And then you got to look at Cincinnati overall this season. 3-8-1 against the spread, 1-6 against the spread in their last 7, while Louisville is 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 games. Louisville seems to be the motivated team here. I think what they're going to do is they're going to focus a little bit more on the run, get the quarterback comfortable, and then they'll try to pass the ball a little bit. And if you actually look at Cincinnati's quarterback, by the way, he's not very good at all. No, 0 touchdowns. I think he's got 1 pick, and he throws for like 50% of his pass completions. So I'm not going to trust Cincinnati at all. I'm going to throw them out the window. I get Louisville at -1, and that's with Malik Cunningham not playing. You would think that line would shift the other direction. I don't think so. I'm going to be trusting Louisville in this spot. Give me Louisville. I got them at -1, -1.5, -2. It's all good on this one. That's a 2-unit special.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great point. When Malik Cunningham's not playing in the game, they're still favored. That is very, very standout. I wasn't aware of the fact that the Louisville coach just took a position with Cincinnati. That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
That's correct.
Talk about a motivational point for Louisville to turn the hell up. I mean,
they set these bowls up real good. It's going to get better as we get down the road. I mean, they did a very good job setting some really good narrative points as we get into breaking these bowls down.
Oh, yeah, without question. Without question. And, just even a blanket point, when you see the line getting steamed up by presumably sharp, because I don't think the market is really getting moved by recreational bettors betting the Wasabi Fenway Bowl in, Fenway Park. I don't think that's Joe Public here, like on a parade down the street to really bet this game, particularly with a total at 42, assuming this game is going to be a really low-scoring dud in Fenway Park. And, I do think if you really look at a couple of the games early season that Louisville did play, one particular one out of conference at UCF, a game they won 20-14. Very low scoring game, 34 points and an outright win. And UCF obviously showcasing very, very sustainable upward movement throughout the back half of the season in conference, particularly with a couple big wins and against Cincinnati, which I had correctly for a 2-unit play on Saturday, October 29th. So I think you're going to use the transitive property a little bit here when Louisville beats UCF in a low-scoring game, indicative of the way this game is to be played, and Cincinnati loses to UCF. 1 + 1 = 2, maybe a 2-unit spot even for Louisville in the opener here on Saturday morning, 11 a.m. It will be. Should be an interesting kickoff time there. Next one, we're going to go to we'll just go down the list here for a minute, and then we'll go to Gunn's last 2 officials. Next one, 2:30 p.m., Las Vegas, Nevada. So that is 11:30 a.m. Pacific. It seems to be a trend here. A lot of early kickoffs in these bowl games. Oregon State, number 14 in the country, comes in here laying just over a touchdown, -10, 53 total against Florida. 6-6, just snuck into a bowl game. A lot of moving parts here. You were talking about it off the air. Florida, significant quarterback issues in this game. Talk to me on this one.
Yeah, so Anthony Richardson's not going to be playing this game. He's going to be preparing for the NFL. And their backup QB in Kitna got caught with some egregious felony charges. I won't get into it about that, but he's not going to be playing that game at all. So they got this guy that hasn't even taken a snap in college football, and he's going to be playing his first game in a bowl game. Now, on the other side of the coin here, you have an Oregon State team that has been basically for us, as if you've heard us on the show at all, it's a team that you want to back while they're playing at home and they're playing in Corvallis, but they've just never shown up in situations where they're playing on the road. They're going to be pretty much full staffed. I don't see any key opt-outs yet on this one. I think they're going to be the most motivated team on this one. And if you want to back anything from statistical standpoints, I've been tracking a lot of these Pac-12 teams versus favorites versus dogs. You'd want to take the favorite more than you want to take the dog with Pac-12 teams. Pac-12 teams are 3-10 against the spread as dogs in bowls dating back to 2018. So that's not a side I'd ever want to take for a Pac-12 team. However, favorites are a different situation. They're basically just above 50% on this one. So you're seeing the line high for a reason. It's more predicated on the fact that you're dealing with a quarterback that is just unproven. Where you have an Oregon State team that has a good offensive line, good running back, a decent quarterback, can move the ball, and the defense has actually played really well this year. They've got some big wins in conference and also out of conference too. I mean, they beat Fresno State at Fresno State this season by 3 points. So take that into the account if you're looking at this one. If I had to lean on this one, I'd probably do Oregon State first half. The line has really gotten out of control on this game. I don't know if it's just overinflated to try to get the market back to level because nobody's betting on Florida on this one. But I don't trust Florida at all. I don't know their quarterback enough to actually go and make a play. And Florida really hasn't done anything to impress me. I haven't paid attention to them too much this season as well. So if I had to lean, I'd say Oregon State first half.
Yeah, I had looked at this, and I was not aware of the situation with the Florida quarterback. And obviously, when you throw a third stringer in here who's never played in a bowl game, particularly against a very, very good Oregon State team. I mean, this is a 9-3 team that ran off a very successful campaign in the Pac-12. 3 losses, but I mean, if we're being realistic here, a 3-point loss to USC at home and a real tight loss to Washington on the road, and then one outlierish blowout loss at Utah. But that was the game after they played USC at home. So that was just a brutal, brutal travel spot there too. Obviously a very explosive Utah offense in Utah. But I think more importantly, go back to the first 3 games of the season, all out of conference. Oregon State was 3-0 ATS out of conference. 2 at home, which for those who follow college football closely in Corvallis is their bread and butter. It's just an incredibly difficult place for the opponent to play. They play well at home, better than actually most teams in FBS football in terms of their home record straight up and ATS. But 2 of those were at home. We had that in week 1, 34-17 against Boise State. They did blow out FCS Montana State 68-28. But I think the most important one, week 2, Saturday, September 10th at Fresno State, 35-32 outright win as a +1 dog. That's an impressive win, particularly before the starting quarterback had gotten hurt for Fresno State. So impressive stuff there. I think the lean in this game would be Oregon State. As much as you think to yourself, this team is not great on the road, they don't function well outside of Corvallis, a win at Fresno State tells me a story, and UF in shambles here. So free play, if anybody wants to put, $20, $50 on this, Oregon State, probably the best look in this game. Next one on the card here, Fresno State, Washington State, 2 Pacific Coast teams playing in SoFi Stadium, obviously Inglewood, California, a beautiful, beautiful stadium to play football in professionally and collegiate. Jimmy Kimmel sponsoring this bowl personally. I didn't know that was going down like that. LA Bowl presented by Stifel. Fresno State -3.5, obviously throwing out a backup quarterback, as we discussed before, facing Washington State. Fresno State -3.5, guns picks. An official.
Yeah, I mean, I think this might be the 3rd Jimmy Kimmel Bowl or something like that. I can't remember how many they've been, but this is not the first one. They're playing in SoFi Stadium. You got to look at Washington State in this one. Tons of opt-outs on this team. They'll be without their 1st, 2nd, and 4th best receiver who went to the transfer portal. And also, if you want to go and see their 3rd best receiver, what's going on with him, Rashard Bell, he's hurt, so I don't think he's going to be playing this game. So what you're dealing with is you got a quarterback from Incarnate Word who transferred over to Washington State. I think his last name's Ward, and he's going to have no receivers whatsoever to throw to in this game. And this is a throwing offense. They average 264 yards per game through the air, 6.6 yards per attempt. That is their bread and butter. So when you look at Fresno State, they defend the pass well as well. So you're also dealing with a good pass defense at Fresno State. They give up 193 yards per game through the air, 52.2% pass completion rate for the season. Now you got to look at Fresno State in this situation. They want to air the ball out. They have QB Kaner, 270 yards per game in passing, 70.9% completion rate. I haven't seen anything that says he's going to be opting out in this game, so I think he's going to make this his showcase, a la Jones back in the day when he played for Duke. There's a couple other quarterbacks that are in there. It's like they consider this their showcase, and then they can move on to the Senior Bowl, and they can do the same thing. Washington State will also be on the defensive side. They'll also be without pretty much their whole entire linebacker core. Their best linebacker and Pac-10 first teamer, Pac-12 first teamer, Henley will not be there, and their 2 top middle linebackers will be gone as well. So there's a lot of unmotivation for Washington State going into this game, and it seems like it's kind of leaning more towards the Fresno State side. Also, Fresno State has played some similar opponents this year. They've actually played some good Pac-12 opponents. They played Oregon State, only lost by 3. And if you actually look at the USC game, which they did get blown out, but also Washington State did. The reason why they got blown out is because the 3rd quarter, guess who got hurt? Jake Haener, and everything just kind of went downhill on that one. If you remember, that was my only 3-unit play loss this season, and that was all predicated on the fact that Jake Haener didn't play that game. The fact that he came back this season and completely changed their season around is absolutely a remarkable story. A la Boise State kind of situation as well. And by the way, Fresno State went to Boise on the blue turf and beat the piss out of them too. So you also look at Washington State in bowl games too. It's not a team you want to back historically. 1-5 against the spread in bowl games dating back to 2015. I've made it a point to fade Washington State every time they're in a bowl game. I'm going to continue that trend here. I love Jake Haener. I think this is going to be a great showcase for him. And also the Fresno State team, the Mountain West champions, by the way. Give me Fresno State -3.5, and it's only a 1.5 unit special.
Yeah, I have no comments on this game. When I looked at this, I thought 3.5, staying away at that early time. But Guns Picks, obviously, having gone into immense detail. We trust him. We will dominate. Next official play, 9:15 p.m., Frisco, Texas, Toyota Stadium. North Texas having a very upstart campaign for them, 7-6 coming out of Conference USA. Boise State laying a significant figure here. Boise State also more impressive than people would have thought. Obviously, halfway through the year, Dirk Cutter comes in, starts calling a much higher run percentage in their offensive system. And it really did flip their entire team and the flow of that team after, obviously, I believe, what's his name, Hank Bachmeier transferred out midseason because of some sort of dispute and whatever was going on there. But nonetheless, Boise State laying 10.5 points, 59.5 total, 9:15 p.m. on Saturday night. Guns Picks, unofficial.
I just want to shout out John Wiley in here. He says, take Mississippi State on December 27th. Key point in this game, we'll bring it up later, but they're playing in Tampa, and guess what Tampa has? Pirate ships. And guess who was the ultimate pirate? That's right, Mike Leach. So take that into account. That should be an interesting fact, but, not part of the cap. But we'll talk about North Texas and Boise State. That's what we're focused on here. Now, North Texas is coming off a brutal loss in the Conference USA Championship to UTSA, 48-27, -205 net yards for the game. Right after the game, guess who got fired? Their head coach, Seth Luttrell. He was on the hot seat all season. They went 7-5. It wasn't enough for North Texas, apparently. He goes away. Now, Boise has already fired their head coach, right? It changed their season around. And they went right to the Mountain West Championship game after the firing, but they lost to Fresno State 28-16, despite winning the net yards battle in that game, plus 76 net yards. So, take that with a little bit of a grain of salt when they're coming into this game. Boise State, they used to be this big passing team with Bachmeier. Not anymore. This team wants to run the football. And that's a credit to Dirk Cutter and just noticing the talent that he has on his roster. They average 5 yards per carry now with a 3-pronged running attack, including their quarterback, Taylon Green. Taylon Green can move his feet. He can actually throw the ball not too bad as well, but he prefers to run the football in the backfield. North Texas has struggled immensely against the run this season. They've given up 4.7 yards per carry to their opponents, 5.1 yards per carry on the road, and they are ranked 109th in the country against the run. So this is just a bad matchup for North Texas. North Texas has a strong offense. They do run the ball really well, 5.3 yards per carry. They pass for 262 yards per carry with the oldest quarterback in college football, by the way, in Austin Oon. He is 29 years old, folks. He is 4 years older than Lamar Jackson, who actually has an MVP under his belt, by the way. But when you look at Boise, they have one of the toughest defenses in G5. They give up 282 yards per game, 3.4 yards per carry on the run, and 161 yards on the pass. North Texas has not faced a defense like this all year. Also, you look at North Texas on the road. We've talked about this a few times, Shark. On the road, -5-point differential, -68 net yard average, and then versus non-conference opponents, -11-point differential, +9 net yard average. North Texas, 1-4. 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 bowl games. Non-covers in the last 4. So they covered their first one and didn't cover their last 4. And they're also 0-8 against the spread in December games, 0-5 against the spread in neutral site games. Now, Boise is the team in a better place right now. They're cooking. They're a team. They're unified. they know the situation with the coach was a little bit rusty, but they actually grouped together and played as a team. Now they're coming into this game versus what is a remedial bowl team that hasn't covered in the last 4. A complete mess, losing their head coach. And I just don't trust this North Texas team versus a complete dominating rush team and a great defense to back it up. They got a little bit of a spittle or, the blood in their mouth, getting smacked from Fresno State. And I think they're going to make up for it and take it out of North Texas. So I'm going to be taking Boise State -10, 2 units special.
Yeah, I'm looking at this now, and I think you're really onto something here. And, back early season, I had a pretty good grip on North Texas. I had taken them actually in week 0 at UTEP to beat UTEP 31-13. But as we know, UTEP ran a very clean sheet last year and was not particularly good this year, albeit with an above-average defense in Conference USA. But, you start to go through a couple other games, which I think are very noteworthy. Saturday, September 17th at UNLV. I also had that play. UNLV put 58 points on these guys and just demolished them in Vegas. And then the following week, they gave up 44 points at Memphis. They did cover the game, I think. I think it was tight. I don't have the spread in front of me here. But again, key point, when you're giving up this many points on the road, particularly early season in these out-of-conference spots, this is probably what's going to happen here. And as Guns mentioned, and I said before, but the run-heavy attack is explosive from Boise State. I mean, they're just getting chunk yards consistently. And you look at some of these points that they put up on the road this year after, obviously, Bachmeier decided to transfer out and Dirk Cutter took over. But one specific game that I'm looking at here, at Nevada, 41-3, just a demolition there. They had back-to-back road games. That was actually their last road game on Saturday, November 19th against Wyoming, at Wyoming. Obviously, a tough travel spot up there. Really tough stadium to play in. And also, it was a road back-to-back off a gigantic performance the previous week. But I think you're onto something here. I do think that Boise State probably is the look. And I do think, you don't want to necessarily autopilot the chalk, but in this particular environment, North Texas, as Guns mentioned, is a very, very, very lackluster bowl team coming off a very intense backdoor within their conference season. So we're on to something here. Boise State -10.5. 2 more games. Let's run through them real quick. Guns picks. 7:30 p.m. ABC Sports, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Talk about a random-ass game for these teams to be playing. BYU, independent, so always out of conference by default. But SMU coming in here, same record, both 7-5. A lot of moving parts, -3.5 SMU. You got any comments on this one?
The only comments on this one, and I was trying to find an angle to get SMU, but problem with SMU is they just can't stop the run. They're one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. And I think BYU is going to have to rely heavily on their run. The quarterback situation with them, Hall had a toe injury. They keep teasing that he may play, he may not play. I think the lean on this one is the toe injury is just too much, and he's not going to play in this game. The backup quarterback, I think it's Conover or something like that. He's transferred out. He's in the transfer portal. So their quarterback situation is not a lot of experience back there and unproven. I think if I was running if I was the head coach of that BYU team, I'm going to be running the ball as much as I possibly can. SMU had a great run there for like 3 or 4 games, kind of like faded off at the end of the season. I mean, they're going to have to pass the ball and they're going to have to actually score real quick on this BYU team. I just don't know which team's more motivated here. I don't really like taking AAC teams this early, especially before Christmas, because usually they just like fall on their face. But then again, BYU is not really a good bowl team. I think the only bowl game that they actually won and covered was with our boy Wilson out in the New York Jets when he actually had a stellar game and probably made himself the number 2 pick in the NFL draft in that game alone. I think it was against UCF. But this was a game that I couldn't get there with either team, and it was just something I had to pass on.
Yeah, the one thing that I was looking at here is the total. I think there's a little bit of access on the under at 64.5. And I think specific to SMU, I think people that are capping this game are going to remember Tanner Mordecai in conference, specifically in recent history, just going off on the road with these incredibly high totals. The last 3 road games, 45-34 at Tulsa. What is that? 79 points at South Florida, 41 offensive points, 64 total. And at Tulane, I think really a showcase to the amount of points that SMU can score within the conference specifically. Not score, but give up 59-24. I mean, another, what is that? 83 points. So again, people are going to look at those 3 games and say to themselves, oh, SMU on the road goes over the total. But you got to go back to early season out of conference, lower totals at Maryland, 34-27. That's under this particular number. At UCF, 41-19. Obviously, UCF, you guys remember that. It was a Wednesday night game. There was some sort of delay or some sort of issue down there in Florida. But UCF ran away with that in the second half. Again, key point, under this total. These are going to be sharp. We're not telling you you're going to get a blowout here. This game's not going to be, 20-17. But I think the access point here would be a lower scoring game, crucial, specific to not looking at conference football for SMU, looking more so at out of conference. So I don't know how many people are going to really want to put that in anyway, because it's 7:30 p.m. on Saturday night. Who the hell wants to root for an under in a bowl game? But the sharp side probably is the under. So
you'd be surprised in bowl games. You're supposed to. I mean, you got to consider these teams have so much prep during the week. You have a lot of guys that are opted out. You have a lot of guys that are coming into situations. There's a little bit of rust factor with a lot of these teams. I know a guy that used to do a situation. He goes, you always take the first half under, and if it doesn't hit, you double down and you do it the second time. And normally that is kind of the strategy he does during the week. And I mean, I've seen him be profitable with it. Not to say that it will happen year after year, but I think that is a smart and wise, sharp choice to, especially with a game that you have an unproven quarterback with BYU and a decent defense for that regard. And you have an SMU team going into a situation in a neutral site. I don't hate that take at all. I mean, especially when you see their non-conference production. So,
yeah, for sure. Last game on the card here on the first show. We're going to do 3 shows, and there will be one next week, and then of course the following week will be the the big bowl games, big conference, Power 5, and of course the championship games, which we will definitely forecast in detail on the Shark and the Gun, Knowledge for College. We appreciate you guys tuning into this final game. Rice Owls on the road. Obviously, what am I saying here? But a neutral site, Hancock Whitney Stadium, Mobile, Alabama, Southern Miss. Now in the Sun Belt, but coming back to a relatively familiar foe here with Rice. USM laying 6 points, total 45.5. Guns picks, any comments? And I will give a couple comments in a half second.
This is just one of those games you're like, huh? These 2 teams are playing in a bowl game. If I was a guy that was controlling a bowl game and I found out that the 2 teams that are coming to my site that I paid hard-earned money on was Rice and Southern Miss, I'd be angry. Especially look at the time. Look at the time on this game. 5:45. People are eating dinner. They're not going to be watching this game at all. If there's a lean on this one and I'm just going completely blind, all I know about Rice is Rice likes to control the clock. They like to control time of possession. They like to move the ball immediately down the field. They don't like to score on you really fast. That's kind of their MO. If they're able to get any success on the offensive side of the ball, they want to be able to just slowly, methodically get down the field, and if they get 3 points, 7 points, and keep their defense on the field, off the field, that's pretty much what they do. So, if between these 2 teams, I would say first half under blindly, but don't take it with a grain of salt here. This is a game that I haven't looked at long enough for more than 5 minutes. I just saw Rice and Southern Miss on the board. I go, ooh, next. So maybe those are the games I probably need to spend a little bit more time on. But yeah, I don't think this is going to be one of those games that you're going to see high flying, scoring 80 points type of situation. I think it's going to be very low, and it's going to be low early rather than late.
I agree with you. I mean, I think, when you go through both team schedules, the first standout point for me here is Rice for the first 6 to 8 games in this season was kind of getting away with murder, if you want to call it that. Just a lot of games that they probably should not have covered where the other team just gave them the game. And, we mentioned UAB, but UAB on the road was one of them. UAB, just a ton of turnovers, just handed them the game. And then there was a game they were on the road at Florida Atlantic. I had it. It was -3.5. They lost the game by 3. I got hooked. And there was a long touchdown very early in the game, about an 80-yard touchdown pass. And that was it, really, for Rice. And then since then, they have cratered down. They got absolutely blown out at home by Charlotte. Guns had taken Charlotte, I believe, against FIU this year. But Charlotte was absolutely horrendous this year. And just as a point of reference, Rice did lose to Charlotte by 23 points. I mean, that is 33 points, excuse me. That is egregious against Charlotte. And then a road game at Western Kentucky, a blowout, and then a loss at North Texas. I believe that was probably a cover, but I don't have it in front of me. When you look at Southern Miss here, I do think Southern Miss laying this amount of points is telling us a strong story versus Rice. When you look at USM, fairly impressive stuff, obviously, in their first Sun Belt campaign. But when you really go through a sequence of losses that they endured in the center point in November, they got hammered at home against Georgia State. You guys know this. Georgia State, very, very inconsistent and unpredictable. At that point in the season, USM had actually beaten Louisiana Lafayette in the previous game with authority. They were on a dub 3. They had won 5 out of 6. So a loss to Georgia State was definitely a tank, fatigue, we're too hot in this environment type of position. Then they went to Coastal Carolina. They did cover the spread 26-23. They played a representative game against South Alabama, who was reasonable to above average this year, 27-20 at home. They did go on the road and beat ULM. And I believe they covered that game 20-10 as a favorite. I think that's where I'm going with this. When you see them covering at ULM on a similar line environment where the line was very low and USM was favored, I think you're going to see a similar game here. I think you're going to see a low-scoring game with USM winning this game over a touchdown. I think it's well graded, but if I had to take a sprinkle on this game, as I know people do want to bet these games for fun. You're sitting in your house on Saturday afternoon, you get, 6 straight bowl games from 11 a.m. all the way through about midnight or later. It's 13 and a half hours of football. You want to take an angle here. I do think USM has the access point, but again, these are not bangers by any stretch of our imagination. And taking a breath, wrapping it up, CFB Knowledge for College, round 1. Again, we will have 3 shows, The Shark and the Gun. It is Wednesday night, and we thank you guys for staying up with us. We know it's 10:35 Eastern. Guys on the West Coast, we see you. Obviously, a much more manageable hour out there. 48 minutes in. Guns picks 5 official plays. UAB -10.5. Troy -1.5. Louisville -1.5. Fresno State -3.5. And Boise State. Dirk Cutter reinvented the group to hammer North Texas, who ran a little bit of a clean sheet coming in the back half of the Conference USA schedule. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back here tomorrow morning. J Money and the Shark, obviously NBA. We're going to clean that up, and we will dominate this bowl season. Guns picks. Close them out with some words, and let's go.
Was that 8 games down, 33 to go? Yeah, this is going to be very fun. I'm already loving this now. Thanks for joining us for the 8 to 12 people that are watching this live. But don't worry, if you missed anything, we'll be sharing the clips as they get closer to kickoff for each and every one of these plays that we actually made official, or even our leans as well. So thanks for joining us, and please subscribe to the Dad Bods YouTube channel, and also please share all the content, whether it be by Twitter or any other social media outlets, and spread the word about all the information that we're sharing today. So good luck with your bets on Friday and Saturday. We will be back again for round 2 next week. So look out for that. It's going to be an absolute fun and remarkable bowl season, and hopefully it's going to be monstrous in profit as well. So thanks, everybody. Good luck with your bets, and as always, let's keep dancing.